This session it's going to look at classification of software. So we've previously spoken about hardware and software and came up with these definitions. So hardware is the physical electrical components of a computer system, whereas the software are the programs which consist of a sequence of instructions that execute on a computer's hardware. Software is designed for a specific task. So they are the clear differences between hardware and software. In this session today, we're going to look at what different categories of software exist. Now there are two types of software: application software and system software. So software can be split into two distinct categories. Application software is software that's designed to perform specific real-world tasks. So these are the kind of tasks that can be completed even if computers didn't exist. So things like doing calculations, things like generating a newspaper, these are tasks that have existed before computers existed and people wanted to do them. Writing a letter, keeping stock control of a shop. Basically, application software is what users use computers for. There's some examples shown here. Example, web browser, a word processor, calculator, stock control software, database, presentation software, spreadsheets. There's an endless list: graphic editing software, photo editing software, drawing programs. There's lots and lots of software out there. You'll discover lots of application software on your computer. If you click on the Windows start bar and have a look through, you'll see a variety of software. System software is software that's used to operate the computer's hardware. So it has some kind of interface with the computer's hardware. System software supports the use of application software, so without it, we wouldn't have our applications. Within system software, there are four categories: utility programs, library programs, language translators, and operating systems. Now, the one of those that you're probably most familiar with is an operating system. So, an operating system that you may be using now, maybe Windows operating system or a Mac-based operating system. If you're accessing this on a mobile device, you may be using an Android operating system. So these operating systems sit in the background on the computer, they interact with the hardware, and it's a platform that allows our application software to be executed upon. So just a brief summary of each of these types of software is we've got the utility program. So utility programs, these are programs that perform specific common tasks related to the running of the computer's hardware. So utility programs can be used by the user and they can run in the background. They can be used specifically by the user to interact with the hardware in some way or another. There's one example would be file compression. So you may have heard of zip files before. Zip files are compressed files, and by taking these files off the hard disk space and reducing the storage space, that is classed as a utility program. We could have a utility program that does disk defragmentation. So this is something that you may find which organizes files across the hard disk drive into one chunk. Files are said to have become fragmented as we save and delete files onto our hard disk drive. Parts of a file may distribute themselves across the different tracks and sectors. Therefore, disk defragmentation needs to take place to take these fragmented files and put them back together again. Registry cleaner, example of utility software, antivirus software. I'm sure you can find many more utility software programs. A library program. A library program carries out common tasks. It's where the code, the data and the resources can be called upon by other programs. So they are similar to utility programs, that they're written to carry out these common tasks, but what it actually contains are them essential pieces of code that other programs make use of. One of the most common ones that you may have heard of is a dynamically linked library, a DLL file. These contain code, data and resources, and they're loaded dynamically by Windows as and when they're required. And there's hundreds of them with a range of actions, including controlling dialog boxes, managing memory, displaying text and graphics, configuring device drivers, and they are used by lots of different programs. I don't know if you may have ever come across a situation where you go to run an application program and it says cannot find DLL. You may have deleted something and it required that linked library to execute. Another type of system software are language translators. Language translators is a piece of software that translates programming language instructions into a form that the processor can execute. Now, as you're coding, you may be coding in a language such as Visual Basic, for example, Python, C#. These are different programming languages. Let's take Visual Basic. When you hit the play button to execute those instructions, what is actually happening is the program is being compiled or interpreted. So to compile the program actually takes that code, the source code that you have written, and all in one go it turns it into an executable file, which is then machine code, which the computer can then understand and the processor can understand to execute. An interpreter works slightly different. An interpreter will go line by line, statement by statement. It will translate and execute that instruction. If there's an error in the syntax, then execution will stop and it will flag up where there's an error. Now, as you've programmed in VB, you may have come across a situation where suddenly the program stops and it highlights a line of code in yellow, and that is the debug tools working, that is the interpreter working. Both of those can be used on a language such as Visual Basic, known as a high-level programming language. An assembler takes assembly language code, which is a second generation language, and it converts that second generation language into machine code, which is a series of zeros and ones, and this can be directly executed by the processor. So language translators are a type of system software. Last but not least, which we've already talked about, is an operating system. And an operating system acts as an interface between the user and the hardware. It controls the computer's hardware. It provides what's known as a virtual machine. A virtual machine is where the complexities of the hardware are hidden from the user. So providing the virtual machine is a key role of an operating system. So that gives you a brief overview of the different types of software that we may encounter on the computer. So just a summary. Hardware are the physical electrical components of a computer system. Software are the sequence of instructions that execute on the computer's hardware to perform a specific task. Software can be subcategorized into application software and system software. Application software performs real-world tasks. System software provides an interface between the user and the hardware and performs tasks relating to the computer's hardware. System software consists of library programs, language translators, utility programs, and operating systems. Language translators can be further split down into assemblers, compilers, and interpreters.